Forged by the fires of our trials, refined by God's craftsmanship.
Hey, welcome to the Virilis podcast. I'm Tyler, here today to talk with an excellent human being, someone who has been through a lot, and someone who is giving back to those who are trying to escape the sort of life he once had. So I'm here to talk with Mike. And Mike, let's just go ahead and ask you the first question here. Mike, tell us about your journey. Where you are now, man.
My name's Mike. I'm 35. I'm from Los Angeles originally. I've been through a lot in the last 20 years, I would say. I was an addict for about 18 years. I was an opiate addict for about 5. And then I was on a MAP program on Suboxone for about 12. It led into other things as addiction does. It spiraled into probably 4 or 5 different drugs on a regular basis. I'm through this process of recovery. I faced a lot of the inner stuff that causes addiction.
Let's go further back.
All right.
When was the first time you did any sort of drug? What was your first drug? What do you remember about it?
I smoked tobacco. That was the
all right.
juxtapose.
Let's rephrase the question. And what was the first illegal substance you did?
Weed.
Yeah.
Weed was the first.
Back when it was illegal?
Back when it was illegal, yes.
And how old were you?
I was 11.
Okay.
12.
Yeah. And how soon after that were you on taking other things that were heavy?
Pretty shortly, I tried coke.
How old were you when you did coke?
I was 12, 13.
Wow.
Around there. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about it. Tell me about the first time you did coke.
I didn't know what it was.
How did you get offered it, or how did you come across it?
Me and a friend found a bag of coke on the ground. We were walking around I think Antioch, and a bag of coke was sitting on the ground, and looked down, and me and him looked at each other, and having seen Scarface and certain gangster movies, looked at it like, oh wait, hang on. We picked it up, but we didn't know what it was. It could have been meth. It could have been crushed up OxyContin at the time.
Yeah.
That was
could have been baking soda.
Oh yeah, it could have been baking soda.
Yeah.
But we picked it up. I remember putting it in my nostril and smelling it, and it smelled like gasoline. I was like, "What is this?" Like that's nasty, but indicative of coke. I remember snorting a little bit for the first time, so I was scared. I'm like, I don't want to overdose, or I snorted a little bit, and then I proceeded to hit my buddy's room for I think it was 5 hours or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were just waiting out your high.
Yeah.
And how long after that did you sort of have the urge to do that sort of thing again?
Drinking.
Yeah.
Like maybe a couple days after. I was like, I loved the feeling of it, and it felt freeing for a second. And I wanted that again. And I went to a bowling alley that we used to go bowling at for like a nighttime event. And I knew the bartender. I was young, but the bartender didn't care. He's like, here you go, it's a beer.
As long as you're giving him money?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Double price.
Mm-hmm. It was. So let's fast forward a bit again. Let's talk about, you said you were like 12, 13, starting to do coke, drinking a lot. How long were you able to function while on these substances before things started falling apart?
Actually pretty long. It was gaps of time. So coke was not readily available at 12 normally, other than finding it on the ground once. Alcohol was.
Mm-hmm.
My mom drank. My dad wasn't a drinker, but it was easily accessible for the most part. Weed wasn't I didn't know a lot of people that sold it, but my neighbor had it. And so every once in a while he'd give me a little bit. But it was once in a while. It was, I'd smoke, I'd say a bowl is a soda can that I cracked the ends and turned it into a little makeshift bong. But that I'd smoke, but then wouldn't touch it for 2 months, 3 months.
Right.
Same with drinking.
I know there was a lot of time between being functional and like your breaking point, but can you just get us to like when things just weren't working anymore at breaking point?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So it became more regular as I split my time between the Bay Area and Los Angeles. My grandma lived in Compton for a long period of time, and so I spent summers down there. And so I got into a lot of stuff that's not normally available in the places that I grew up in, and so at least spent my schooling time. Flash forward to high school, my drinking picked up. I actually left the street life behind at 16. And I got stuff together for the most part. I had a job, I had a ton of friends. I was doing really well in life. But, in the middle of that, I lost my dad to addiction. My mom was an addict herself and probably at the worst of her addiction run at that time. My drinking skyrocketed. Like the signs were there in the middle of that time frame, as well as I was doing. My drinking went from, I would drink a 30 rack of beer and be okay.
And how old were you at this time?
Probably 17, 18. Mm-hmm. It starts small. It starts with finding a bag of Coke on the ground and, smoking weed every once in a while. And it escalates, throughout, childhood to a point where, you're using it to cope with the things that that most teenagers face. This isn't abnormal for, me. Maybe my story's different than most, but it's very, I think it's common that you find like, oh, alcohol numbs pain.
Yeah.
And it's a painful time.
Right.
So, what was drinking at some point turned into a lot of weed drinking. And then my mom asked me to get her Coke, and that started a spiral of, okay, I'm now into harder drugs. I got a job at a place at Sears as a loss prevention agent. And my coworker, I showed up with a hangover one day, not good. I was ready to go home. And my coworker, I was like, I'm tapping out, dude. I can't even see straight. I need sleep. And he said, he goes, here, try this. And he took a pill out, broke a piece off of it, and slid it across the table to me. Said, try that. And I took it, and usually it's pretty quick. If you take a Tylenol, it's relatively quick. It took a little longer for anything to happen. But I went walking around the store to keep myself awake. And in the middle of that, I was like, all of a sudden, like in a movie where like Wizard of Oz or whatever, where it's like black and white, and then all the color comes in, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, the saturation.
I'm gonna catch everybody stealing. That was my mentality.
What was that?
It was OxyContin.
Oh, OxyContin.
Which is interesting because it's the same thing that killed my dad.
Did you know?
I didn't know when he handed it to me what it was. I had like sunburns as a kid that were bad enough that I had to take a Vicodin, but this was, way stronger than Vicodin. And it was the best feeling I've ever had. It went out the window that this killed my dad or, forced so many problems into my own family with my mom and my mom and my dad were opiate addicts. So, it didn't cross my mind at all because I felt great. I felt incredible. It was like I could take on the world.
Right.
And that's indicative of a problem, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it spiraled from there. I remember the first couple ones he gave to me for free. And then, like any dealer does. And I know I dealt drugs well before that moment. So I knew the buy-in. I just didn't care. And I bought more off of them, and then it became a regular thing. What started as a piece of I think it was a 40 milligram OxyContin turned into a 580 milligram OxyContin a day habit.
Wow.
Within 2 years or a year and a half, a year and some change. And then it was finding any opiate I could find. It didn't matter what it was.
So you were doing hard drugs daily?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've used opiates that most are like, what is that? Like, especially in the area that I was living in at the time, it was so easy to find.
Right.
I had friends that did it, and we would, hey, this dude's got this got this, and that lasted a long period of time. It was like 5 years, total of just about as hard as I could go. I've overdosed a few times. This is before Narcan too.
Right.
Narcan was not a thing, so there was no reverse course. I remember one time I turned blue, threw up, and passed out, so fell over. And my buddy was doing CPR on me.
Wow.
I was still breathing, but he was doing CPR on me, not knowing
if you're gonna make it.
If I was gonna make it, yeah. That was a couple times.
So let's pause there for our audience to share what Narcan is. Especially fentanyl is now a thing that kills people everywhere. Now, everywhere, all over the state of California, police officers, recovery centers, they have a thing called Narcan, which is basically a thing that's going to save your life if you're overdosing. And it didn't exist back when you were having 3, you said, overdoses. Yeah. So that alone is a miracle as to why you're still with us. But I'm someone who believes that people are miraculously saved for reasons, and I think you are one of these people. But before we get to your story, what you're doing now, let's reach that point of that breaking point. Obviously, an overdose for many people is their breaking point, but you let it ride, you let it keep going. What's that point where you're just like, I gotta stop?
Yeah, I had 2 in my life, 2 points like that. One was I remember I was detoxing or kicking in my bedroom. I couldn't find opiates anywhere, and I remember hitting a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is crazy. So I went to my mom, who was an opiate addict, and told her what was going on, and she said, "Well, I did the same thing. I have a doctor I want you to go see. I want to get you on Suboxone." I didn't know really what that was, or what that would lead to. That was my first kind of, I'd say, breaking point of this is really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But in a MAP program, it's supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to be 6 months of a taper, and then it helps you transition into living without substance use. Mine just spiraled from there even. Mm-hmm. So on a MAP program, I was on it for about 12 years. In that time, it wasn't quenching that thirst for that high. Over time, it just normalizes. I take it and I feel normal, but I still wanted the high. And so I was chasing. So it spiraled into other things, meth, Xanax.
Just to get the high.
Just to get the high. Finally, 12 years of that, living couch to couch, I finally rented a room in Concord for about 8 years. I was broken. I was way overweight. I couldn't hold a job to save my life. I couldn't do, basic things, even bathing, which was hard for me to do. And after that, for 5 or 6 years, you hit a breaking point. My car was totaled. I crashed it on the freeway because I was high on Xanax, and I finally hit a point where I was like, okay, this is not fun anymore. And I don't mean using is not fun anymore. Life is not fun anymore.
Yeah, you're at that point many addicts reach where if you're not high, you're dying.
Yes.
Yeah, not just physically, but you feel like you'd rather be dead.
Yeah, I think some subconscious part of me saw through the addiction part of it, the cloud of addiction that hangs over your life, and it was like, I'm done. I don't want life anymore. I was like, I don't see any way through this. I don't see any way out. There's no door open to me. I tried for the final 5 years of my addiction, my full-blown addiction. I had tried to get into programs where I lived in Contra Costa County. I would call the access line, and I was like a regular calling the access line, and then I would use Xanax, which fogs your memory. So I would call them again and again and again. I would call constantly. I need help. Like, I can't say that.
Yeah, like, hey, we just talked to you 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Why are you calling?
And their basic answer was, you're on a MAP program. You're in an outpatient MAP program. You're considered in treatment. We can't take you into a residential facility.
Right.
Clinically, insurance-based. They were billing my insurance at an outpatient program. They had no transitional points to say, okay, he needs higher level of care.
Right.
So
I
gave up. I said, I'm done. I've tried to get recovery. It's not there for me. Maybe that's what it is. And I started contemplating suicide. The first time I thought about it, I was like, what if I jumped into traffic? I'm like, that's not going to be quick. That's not a fun way to go out. I thought about the Golden Gate, but they just started putting up security measures at the Golden Gate. Yep. And so I finally settled on, look, I'd taken drugs for the last little bit, and I'm pretty dang good at finding and using drugs.
Right.
And fentanyl became a big thing, obviously. And I'm like, well, it's killing people left and right. That'll take me out.
Wow.
And so I bought like $340 worth of Xanax from Tenderloin, which I knew had fentanyl in it.
Yeah, it's all over.
And I kept it for a while, maybe a couple months. Ironically, I'd actually gotten off of Xanax 6 months before I hit this point.
Wow.
So for 3 months, I got off Xanax, but had enough to kill myself sitting in it.
You just weren't thinking.
No.
You couldn't think.
Not at all. And so I finally hit a point where I decided, it was like, okay, I'm done. Like, this is, had a couple minor things happen. My mom had a dog that I really loved. It was one bright spot in my life. Small thing, wasn't even my dog. And that dog died. And that, after 20 years of doing this, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll see you. And I remember sitting in a chair in the room that I rented, holding a bottle of pills. I wrote out a suicide note, which it's an indescribable thing to explain, writing a letter to your family saying, this is why I can't do this anymore.
Right.
When I was sitting in the chair, I was holding the bottle of pills and the suicide note. And I remember asking myself a question: what are you doing, Mike? What are you doing? And I could hear the question in my head, and I was saying it out loud. What are you doing? And I remember setting the pills and the suicide note down. And I say, my life was so unmanageable. I had clothes all over everywhere, trash. My room was a mess. Everything was it was just in disarray. My family would have found a brutal situation had I actually pulled it off.
Right.
I picked up the Bible. I pulled it off a shelf. I literally, just like a movie, I went, dusted it off. A whole bunch of dust flew off. I hadn't touched that thing in, I can't even tell you how long. And I had to dust my room, so it was really bad in there. So I picked it up and I opened it up to Genesis. I literally just opened it up
first page.
Yep. And I read in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I get to the part which says, and God, talking about God said, let there be light, and there was light. And I got pissed. I got so mad. I picked up I stood up, I grabbed the Bible, and I slammed it down on my bed. Wow. And I was furious. And I sat down in the chair, I'm shaking, and I pick up the bottle of pills and the suicide note again, and I'm like, I'm tired of this. I'm just done. And I always explain it when you go on a roller coaster, you just have to push through that little bit of fear or anxiety and get on, and then you're on. Yeah. That's what it was like. Had I pushed a little bit past that line, and I was already actively trying to do that, I'd have done it.
you're at the point you've already made the decision, and you had pills in your hand, and you were about to do it. So what stopped you?
I don't know where this comes from. I mean, I know where it comes from, but I had a overriding thought for a second. It was like, pray. I hadn't prayed in 15 years. I don't know what I believed at that point in time, outside of I was miserable. I didn't have any relationship with God for a very long time. I think the last time I had anything was I was 19. I got baptized because life was, getting difficult, and this was my first run of addiction. I was reaching out for something, but not knowing what.
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, look, I'm gonna pray. What's the worst that happens? It's like phone a friend.
Right.
If nothing happens, cool. Then I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
And so I prayed, and it was more of a prayer for my soul, not for my mouth or my head.
Yeah, not your brain.
The words are probably scrambled, I'm sure. I can't even imagine what that sounded like. But I basically essentially said, God, if you made me for something, if you put me here on this planet for something, if you have something for me, now's the time, or take me home.
Wow.
And an immediate thought came to my head of wait a week. Wait a week and see what happens. Like, kind of desperation. What's the worst happens? I'm back on,
right.
And I didn't tell anybody I was planning to do this. Like, this was, all the signs were there that I was.
Right.
So I gave it a week. Well, a lot happened in that week. So my brother got baptized.
Yeah.
He, which is something I never thought I'd say.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, imagine the craziest person in your life saying, I want to go get baptized. You're like, excuse me? Like, well, the deacon that brought him into the fold was a guy he was hanging around with who I knew pretty well. Ironically, there's some side stories to that, but I talked to him on the phone after the baptism. He pulled my brother in to get baptized. And I spoke to him after the baptism on the phone. I was in Concord, and I was telling him, like, I'm trying to get recovery, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm trying to do that. And he basically said he had gotten clean himself. So he said, go to Cherry Hill. I was like, what's Cherry Hill? He's like, it's a detox center. I'm like, dude, I've tried recovery. I've called programs. I've called insurance. I've done, there's no handbook on how to do this stuff when you're in the throngs of it, and you're not thinking straight anyway.
No.
So I'm calling different. I'm like, dude, I tried that. I'm not doing this anymore. And he goes, go to Cherry Hill. I was like, well, do they take insurance? He goes, you have Medi-Cal, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, you're good. Do I need to bring anything? Yeah, yourself. I had no experience of what recovery meant in the Bay Area, or what the services look like in Alameda County. I was living in Contra Costa, and when I did live in Alameda County, I didn't have any idea of what was here.
Where to go?
Yeah, I never tried recovery. It was my first run in any sort of sobrietal sense, and so I called Cherry Hill, and then I called Salvation Army, of all places, and said, I'm going to Cherry Hill. I need a program to go to. I didn't know that they have someone at Cherry Hill who does this. And so I called, and I remember the guy on the phone, he's like, oh, yeah, cool, we'll take you. Tell them you're coming here. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Like, that was very fast that he said that.
Yeah.
And I went to Cherry Hill. The day I went, I predated my suicide note for a week out. The day I left for Cherry Hill was the date that I put on my suicide note. So before in the last 2 days of me living in that house, I packed up all my stuff in garbage bags. I threw it all in dumpsters in Concord. I had some family help driving the trash bags, because talking like a mile walk to a dumpster that you could throw stuff out in. I packed a suitcase. I had 2 other trash bags that I stored at my sister's house. And then the day I got in the car, I packed everything else up that I could. I had a suitcase. I burned the note. I flushed the pills down the toilet. About an hour later, I got into a car and I drove off to Cherry Hill Detox Center, which I burned the bridge at the house. I can't go back. There's
nothing there for you.
There's no going back.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, look, if they don't take me in or they kick me out, which is a possibility, I may not be able to, I'm going to be homeless or then suicide's on again.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into Cherry Hill. I did my time there, and through that, the case manager there, I noticed an immediate change. I was cleaning everything. I was like driven, which is weird. I was not a driven.
Yeah, you went from not being able to think to all you can do is work
in a second. Like, it was so fast, and I was responsible for others. And it was an immediate change. It wasn't something that happened gradually. Like, it was like I started helping others. I started counseling, like even just giving people advice and like, hey, bro, just stay in here. Don't leave. Like, there's something good from this. I'm saying that I'm a client myself. I have all of 0 time of sobriety. I was still on Suboxone.
Yeah. You don't know the details. You just know that stay or die, basically.
Yes. And in that time there, the case manager there, me and her were really, really friendly with, just, it was a good rapport there. And I told her my plan to go to Salvation Army. And she said, look, this is your first run of recovery. I don't think Salvation Army is a good idea. I have a plan. I have an idea. It's a long shot, but I think you do really well at it. I want you to go talk to one of our staff members who interns and case manages over there at this place, and, ask her what it's like.
What place was this?
City Team Oakland.
City Team Oakland. City Team Oakland. Yeah.
So I talked to the staff member. She explained, what City Team does and how it operates. The ideas behind, not trying to address, not just the addiction, the sobriety part itself, but, try and tackle the larger problems, things like, addressing homelessness or addressing, career opportunities, addressing mental health support, things like that.
Yeah. Your past as well to what started this whole thing. It's the holistic approach of recovery.
Everything. Yeah. Biopsychosocial, spiritual. And then the faith part was ironic because I'm like, well, it's a Christian ministry. I don't know. I wasn't in faith. I didn't even.
Yeah, you didn't like the first page of the Bible. You threw it down. That didn't work for you earlier. Why is it going to work for you now? So what? I'm sure that changed for you. Like,
oh yeah.
My understanding that program is
you won't allow to tell God your plans.
Yeah, right, right. God will prove you wrong. Yeah. And how did that happen for you?
So I came into City Team. July 28th, 2023. I remember the dates still easily, like on Ready Call. I came in, I was here for about 20 days. I honestly thought for the first 20, 30 days, I had died.
Wow. Why?
I think, I kind of explain it like this, like when you're mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ready for a stepping off point, that your mind, body, and soul follow suit. Because I was so close to killing myself and actively pushing to do that, I think that it fractured part of myself in a way. Mm-hmm. It's hard to explain, but like I felt a comeback from that.
Right.
So the first 20 days, I'm like, maybe I killed myself.
This is just
heaven's a rehab.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just being aware of the environment there. It's very spirit led, very community driven. This whole idea.
A lot changed fast.
A lot changed fast.
I went from
a recovery center
in a 1-bedroom,
right?
1 bed or 1 room thing with a twin bed in it, tiny by myself, completely isolated to people around me everywhere. every day you have 40 people around you, 40 men that are all doing the same thing. It was a jarring thing to go through all that. And I'd never done all this before. So it's like, I don't know what to expect. So I think all of that plays a factor in my mental state at that point.
Right.
But one thing I remember early on, I read Genesis 1, chapter 1, like 1 through 20, I think.
Yeah, so you picked the Bible back up.
Because I was curious. Like I was like, okay, it's a ministry. Like what is, what's this about? Like I was mad before, obviously. I was close to doing something really stupid. But I picked it up and I started reading through it, and I kind of lit into it. It was like a new light. It was like reading it and new, like the words made sense. About 20 days in, I was sitting in our dining room. Our learning center was, they were doing something with like the pipes or something like that. And I was in the dining room, and I had a laptop out, and I was working on my career essay. And I had a moment in our dining room that was like, the best way I can explain is like my soul lit up. Was I looked around me and I looked at everybody trying to do something good with their lives and better themselves. And I had this instant just inner knowledge, I guess, or just, like God put it on my heart. Like, this is what I want to do. And it that moment spiraled into, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds.
No, we're in the weeds now. Can you say, this is what I want to do? What exactly do you mean you want to
help people?
Yeah, the people who were in the room with you looked around and everything, looked at people suffering. Yeah. And you just wanted to change everyone's life around you. I
did. I mean, I knew the pain I felt even then. And I was early. I mean, I was 20 days in. I didn't know anything then. And I'm looking around and I'm going, I want to help.
Yeah.
People are struggling out in the world. And, you don't have to look very far to see that.
Yeah, especially not in Oakland.
Yeah. I mean, most people just look in their own homes.
Yeah. And
I think that's the Rubicon that I faced.
Wow, look at you picking big words. Rubicon.
I looked at it like, instead of running from this thing that killed my dad, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But
no, let's not jump to that right away. Because we're still before that point.
At that point, I'm looking at all these people. My whole life had been ravaged by it.
Right.
I mean, it's the whole reason I was sitting in that chair in the first place, was that, addiction had busted up my family in a major way and caused so much pain and heartache and brokenness. And I'm like, instead of turning away from the fight, why don't I join it?
Turn towards it.
Yes.
And pick up your spear.
Yes.
And something I want to point out, and this should be said so our audience can hear it, because deep down, I think you've accepted this fact, but it should be said so our audience can hear it. This fact that it's not your fault that you grew up in that environment.
No.
It's not your fault that you had a bartender when you was handing beers to a 13-year-old. It's not your fault that the system failed you for 12 years. And it's not your fault that you ended up at that point.
Nobody. In every sense of this word, I'm grateful for it. I'm entirely grateful for it, because I mean, the journey I've been on in this has been nothing but transformative and important and profound and beautiful and painful. And I mean, the lessons I've learned from it are amazing.
Yeah.
There's some, it's a knowledge base you cannot gain anywhere else, but going into some serious, muck and craziness to find it. It's truly a hero's journey. Like, you go into, a dragon's lair and face this,
Putting David Campbell.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, and it's very much like that. It's, it's facing something that is, it's mean, it's cruel, it's indiscriminate, there's no battle flag. There's no
There's no white flag.
no classes. No, it affects all classes. It affects all genders, all races, all backgrounds. Yes, those figures change given those circumstances, but it affects everybody.
Right.
Everyone in the world could say, "Oh, I know one person that drinks too much," or "I know one person that uses drugs, to a dangerous level."
Right.
And facing it in myself.
You had to face it in yourself.
Yeah.
No, so we're still kind of in the middle of your story here because you went through this near unaliving experience.
Yeah.
And then you go into this detox center and then went into city team, Cherry Hill and city team. And you had this moment where what I assume to be the Holy Spirit grabbing you by the heart to allow you to focus on your future. And one thing I often tell people, and I think Aaron should hear this too, is like you don't want to steal from your future self. And you, I think, reach that epiphany where it's like my future self is to help everyone here in the room with me and then do that.
Yeah.
And because that's like God's calling in your heart that I think you're saying something like this earlier. It's not like words. It's like an indescribable feeling that you had that was an unbearable affliction that you had to respond to.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the first 20 days of your program, but this is like a year-long program you're in. So what happened between that moment of like, oh, this is what my life's going to be now, to graduation, to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I got used to listening when I would experience those things through my program time, and even into my internship. It was something's talking to me that I don't know fully what it is. I have an idea, but I don't. I'm a human being. I can't possibly fathom the complexities of it. And I listened. The second time I was in a walk-in fridge. When we run a kitchen here, I'd just been tapped as a kitchen lead, so I was running a crew of 5 guys.
To pause on that really quick. It's City Team. What the guys in the program do is not only they worry about themselves, but they prepare 3 meals a day for the unhoused population right out the front door. And that's what the kitchen lead does. You're responsible for making sure all the unhoused individuals eat. And
so, and it's a commitment. So you're healing. You're here to have a place to heal, and you're also serving those, out the front door, and that's dealing with a lot more than you are at that point, because they're in active addiction. And so, especially in downtown Oakland, I don't know who's going to listen to this, but anybody who knows downtown Oakland, it's crazy. It's like a war zone in many ways. And so I was in the kitchen. I was in our fridge walk-in, and I was sorting vegetables, and I was scared. I was like, I don't know how to operate a kitchen. Like I could work a kitchen at home, but I don't even have a grocery list. I can't put a list together of stuff to go get. How am I supposed to possibly do all this? And I was sorting vegetables in the walk-in, and I heard, I'd say a voice, not an audible voice, in your ear. It's in your heart and in your mind, saying, "Stay the path." And that experience continued. I don't want to get into every little thing because it's a lot to process and a lot to explain, but I listened to it, and it led me. He led me.
Yeah, for sure. I impression, because there are many stories like this, experienced some of this type of thing myself. But yeah, it's the Holy Spirit, it's working through you to refine you and shape you into the warrior you need to be to fight these battles for His kingdom.
Yeah.
So keep going on that path, and you made graduation, and crazy. Let's highlight a couple things. One, you alluded to it earlier. You did face tragedy, but you also saw signs, and I give me the highlights of what would have broke you, and what signs that were given to you to keep going, that type of thing.
What do you mean, like?
Well, I want to make sure the audience knows how supernatural this was.
Yeah.
Like when people hear things like, "Oh, I just heard like an inner voice." If you've never heard that inner voice, it's foreign. But you also saw signs. Yeah. So let's see you talk about those signs you saw too.
I've had a lot of different spiritual experiences through this. I've had I call it revelation. I don't even know how to explain it any other way, but like awake visions of things. I always explain it like it's like a viewfinder. I think that's what it's called. The thing that you click the pictures on.
The circular thing.
Yes, and it flashes the photos in the binoculars you use. It's like that, about as fast as you can click the side of it, flashing in front of me, praying. My eyes are closed, but it's flashing in front of me about as fast as you can flash it. So for 2 to 3 minutes, it's just a snapshot of events that have not happened yet, or at least I don't know how I process it, but and as this is happening, an inner voice is saying encouraging things. You'll have help. I'll be there every step of the way. I'm here for you. And that's one of many. Other ones is, and I've showed this photo quite a bit. Is there's a little slab of concrete that someone drew in. They lay concrete, people draw on them. And it says it's around the corner from our program. It's been there way longer than our program, for sure. It looks old. And on it says "Stay the course," which is exactly what I've heard. I heard the first moment. Yes. Mm-hmm. And it's been a ton of those. Every step of the way through this has been some sign or
supernatural thing that you can't explain.
Yes. Very, very profound. I can feel the weight of it all, in many respects. And it's given me, he's given me things to do. Like in my program time, I wanted 3 things out of the way: drugs, prescription medications that weren't necessarily narcotics, and then smoking. The first one, was a big flashpoint, and, coming into a program, I came in on the Sublocade shot. And I remember my brother telling me, "Don't go back." I was on the highest milligram you can get for the shot. And normally it's a 6-month taper to go down from that, to get off of it. I didn't go back.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I went once, I got it, and that was it. I stuck it out. I detoxed in a program while working in a kitchen. I was like, it was understood. That's just it. I had to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For our audience to understand this, a MAP program is basically you're given shots to mimic the feeling of having these drugs in your system. But those were on MAP programs, like Mike here, he was on it for 12 years. And because you have to withdraw from the drug, those drugs they give you too. And it's not fun to do that. So many people end up being on a MAP program until they die because they just can never get off of it. But he stuck it out, worked in the kitchen, the program at City Team, and through his faith and his deep commitment to what God's leading him to do, decided to tough out those withdrawal symptoms and replace it with a relationship with God. And I'm going to fast forward a bit here because I want to get to the stories of you today. So you graduated what month at the City Team?
I graduated in May 2023. May 18th, I believe, May 15th.
So what happens after you have different choices as a graduate of City Team?
Uh-huh.
You made one choice. What choice did you make?
So in my program time, I wanted to get my CAD-C certification to become a substance use counselor. Mm-hmm. So in my module 3, which is about midway through our program time, maybe a little over midway, I started a class that City Team offers called CCAP, but it's the governing board for your CADC substance use counselor credentials or licensing. It's an 8-month course. I started it in January, so it would have been my mod 3. By the time I hit graduation, I was already 2 months, 3 months into that class.
So you got a good head start there.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
A very good head start. I was also pre-interning. So, and to get your counseling credentials through CAD-C, you have to have intern hours. And so it's like 3,000 for CCAP and 2,080 hours for CADTP.
Yeah.
And so there's a decision to be made when you graduate city team that you can stay an intern. You work for the program.
Right. So it's not only work and you get paid to intern. You get the hours for being an intern case manager to build up your hours that are needed to get this certification for CADC. But also you continue to live at City Team and continue to participate in City Team with all the AA classes and the DBS and wake up in the morning, go to bed at night as all these guys who are coming through these doors. Yep. That must have been hard.
It's interesting going through, program hitting a point where you then gain responsibility from it. I knew this is what I wanted to do, so I dove into every aspect I could, and it was a hectic start for me in my internship. Just the time, and this happens in any organization. Things shift in an organization, and it causes pressure to be spread out among everybody in the company or the
organization
program. Yes, and so for me, it was at a time when we didn't have a lot of interns, and there was a lot of weight put on all of our shoulders, and a lot of workload that we had to pick up because you see a ship wobbling and taking on water, you grab a bucket. And so it taught me toughness. It taught me diligence. It taught me to be responsible for others. So many different things that are foundational to who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me an arena to test those skills.
Yeah, and I'll just share this for our audience so that people understand the level of stress you may have been experiencing. There's like a reoccurring phrase that people say to people who are just starting doing case management. Don't ever be the reason for someone's overdose. Like, don't ever be the reason for someone to give up on their program. And when you're dealing with people who are struggling and understandably lacking a lot of patience, taking things out on them, it's sometimes painful to deal with. And you do have to build up a lot of resilience and build up a thick shell and armor for yourself to not let that take you down. But I'll reopen this box too. You did multiple cycles as an intern. The C team picked up a lot of hours case managed with individuals in the program you were working with. But you faced a major tragedy while you were doing that work too.
Yeah, it was definitely a complicated time. I had 10 KCs. I split my caseload for Turning Point, which is a program for in-house guys that are looking to get back on their feet, that either graduated a program or suffering issues with homelessness or not being able to keep a job and have stability. I split the caseload with one other guy. I had four or five others in Renew, which is the drug program, and I was, my hours were nuts. It was 90 to 100 hours a week for about 7 months straight to get through all of that. Towards the end, I was hitting a point where I'm like, I'm done. This is too much for anybody. But I put in my 30-day notice at a Chipotle where I was a manager, and then I put in my 30-day notice at City Team. I was exhausted. Didn't really have much of a plan, but I'm like, I just need to get away, like hard reset kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And our internship cycle started on October 1st. I renewed. I got, I discussed it with our program manager. He said, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't want to see you go. I think you need to learn some things through this. And he wasn't wrong. So I stayed. 9 days after, on October 10th, my mom died. She died of a heart attack. She was a school psychologist. She had about 30 years of addiction under her belt. We think it was a heart attack induced by long-term cocaine use. And it was heartbreaking because she was by far my largest champion in this. By far the biggest supporter, cheering me on from the sidelines. Anytime I would take a pass in my program time or internship time, she would, she'd take me to, Costco, go get a whole, 3-pound bag of Jolly Ranchers and whatever I needed clothes-wise. She was just nothing but supportive. When I got my internship, I called her and my stepdad, and both of them, they like screamed on the phone.
Like in celebration.
So happy, yeah. The amount of support I got from her in doing this was unshakable, and she was that way my whole life. Someone I was very, very close to, and it was terrifying because in the middle of internship and all this stuff going on in my life and this giant shift in not just my life but my purpose and my faith and all of this was.
You were prior to this reaching a breaking point. Yes.
Just a burnout basically. I was exhausted and it forced me to slow down. It forced me to okay, you need to take a breath and figure out where you're at and what you're doing. And I saw it as an opportunity. It's hard to, personally I took it as a loss, and I've had to process the grief of that, but professionally in City Team, I took it as an opportunity to show everybody around me that is, still trying to better their lives, that is facing addiction, that is facing the same things that that life throws all of us. Life doesn't stop because you want to go to hell. That it doesn't matter what life throws at you, that you can overcome it. That nothing has to define anything in your life, that a loss like this, as tragic, as heartbreaking as it was, isn't a reason to give up ground, give up progress. If anything, you can use it as an excuse to do better. To say, look, you know what, I'm going to make this worth something.
Yeah, I'm going to hang on that for a second because I think if you were to have faced what happened to your mom when you were in Cherry Hill, first got into detox, I don't think you'd still be here.
I always say 2 years ago, had she passed, it would have definitely killed me. It would have been easily the thing that threw me way off the edge. Even in Cherry Hill, I don't think I would have stayed. I would have obviously left for, bereavement. I don't think I would have gone back. I don't know what that would have done in my sobriety. It would have absolutely busted me up. Even in my program time, I had conversations with some of my brothers here that were programming with me that I have to think about this all the time. Like, what's the one thing that could take me out? To plan for eventualities. And I'm not kidding. I said, the one thing I can think of is the loss of a family member, and then I quoted like my mom. That's the one thing I think that could take me off my path. And here I am facing that exact same reality, knowing it was coming in some form or fashion, but not as quickly as it did.
It is very soon. Yeah, that's really sad. But just to share, you didn't jump off. You stayed strong. You not only stayed strong, but I think it helped you figure out what's next. You did reach that breaking point where things were too chaotic, and then shortly after that, here's a thing that's going to break you, and it made you stronger. Yeah. And it helped you inform what you would pursue in life, and help get you to where you are now, and share with the audience what you're doing now, and how that process of getting to that point has been and what's it doing for your future.
Yeah. I dove into the city team. I put as much effort as I could into this, but I also learned. I learned the back end of things, I'd say staff side, but in internship, you're kind of the bridge between staff and the guys in the program. I leaned a little more towards the hiring, so I wanted to learn how to do this because I knew that this is what I wanted to do. My mom was about service, and her job as a school psychologist. She was a counselor for kids. She was who she was, and I felt like, look, this is right up my alley, and something she loved that I did. So my case management got a little more hands on, or a little more honed, I should say, and I tried to learn as much as I could. Well, through that, I'd been applying for the detox center that I went into, Cherry Hill. I'd been applying to them for 7 months. Every time something would happen, I think the first time I had staff members there, giving me recommendations to get hired there, and something would happen where, hey, our program manager's out, they're not hiring, or something would happen. And there was a few guys in my time that were trying to aim at the same thing. I just kept going. I said, they can't slam the door in my face forever, basically.
Yeah, consistent.
And finally, towards the end of this last internship cycle,
at CDT,
I had the driver of Cherry, who comes here a lot, who drove me here to the city team. She came by to drop a few people off. I was talking to her outside, and she said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm interning here, but I'm looking for work. I like to work in the field." And I tried a couple other places in recovery. Finishing the hours for my certification, so I'm not too far off from that. She said, "Apply at Cherry Hill. Are you out of your mind? Like, what are you doing?" I'm like, I've been trying to get a job there for 7 months. And she said, "Well, look, here's my email. Send me your resume. I'll go put it on the desk right now. Like, I'm going back in like an hour. I will have it on the desk within the hour." So I, hurried on. I wrote it, sent her my resume, and she goes, "I put it on her desk. You're good." I said, "Okay." The next day they called me.
Wow.
The next day the program manager called me. So, I got hired on at Cherry Hill. I went through all the slew of background stuff, doing a TB test, and I'm pretty sure I bought a house, and they have raised my firstborn children.
Give them a kidney.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it seemed like it. But I now work at the same detox center I walked into a year and a half after walking in there. So it's incredible. I mean, and I'm a substance use counselor too. They want me as an intake counselor, so they're training me to do intakes into Cherry Hill. It's an amazing job. It's much like internship here in a lot of ways. Yes, it's a little different of a feel because it's clinical. That means like there's certain processes and insurance information that have to be processed. So it's much more of a learning curve a little bit. But the counseling part of it is exactly what I was doing here. I try to bring the same.
Yeah, for our audience to know, I'm interviewing Mike at CDT. So when he says here, he's talking about at CDT.
Yeah.
CDT of Oakland.
I've been doing it for about a month now, and already I feel like I'm making an impact. I see I talk to a lot of the people there, and they're in the middle of it, and I remind them as much as I can that I was you.
Right.
I was where you're at. Literally, I will walk them down to the room that I was in, and I laid in that bed.
Yeah.
That one right there.
Yeah.
And
2 years ago.
Yes. What they're going to see going forward, what a program looks like. A lot of the people that have been through Cherry Hill, they've also been through programs now. They have an idea of what it looks like, but I try to bridge the gap for people that don't. Specifically people that don't. That just come in there, they've never been to a program. They're either continuous Jerry Hill cycles, or they've never tried recovery. Is like, I don't know what to expect with all this. It's like, well, look, this is how it's gonna look going forward, and then manage expectations.
Yeah. So for our audience, we're at the end of this interview of Mike. If you were to meet someone for the first time who needs recovery, now obviously we know what it's like to be cloudy, where you're not really seeing anything. But say you had the power of the Holy Spirit traveling through you, where anything you say to someone would get through to them and they would remember it. What would you tell someone who's suffering from severe addiction?
I would say it's never too late. You're never facing too long of odds. It's very simple. It's just hard. I say this to people a lot, by the way. You're tougher than you think. You have more support than you could ever imagine. You just don't know it. And more importantly, what comes from it, from sobriety, from recovery. And I don't mean just not using drugs, from facing the inner parts of yourself that have to be addressed in order to realize long-term sobriety, or any chunk of sobriety, is that the peace that comes from it, the freedom that comes from it, the lessons, the knowledge, all of it is by far the biggest gift you could ever give yourself. That your dreams are on the other side of that. That everything you ever wanted out of life, that everything you could ever see out of life is there.
Yeah, that's almost the perfect thing to say. I would say everything you need is potentially on the other side of the program.
Yeah.
And I say need instead of want, because when we are not sober, we don't know what we want. We want that next high, and that's all we can think about. But when we get past that, that's when the whole world changes. Any closing remarks, sir?
I mean, for anybody that listens to this, that knows somebody struggling with addiction, that is struggling with addiction themselves, stick by them. If you know somebody who's struggling with it, you don't have any idea of how, where they're at emotionally or mentally. I had 3 or 4 people in my life that never left my side. Even in the middle of the worst I could possibly have treated anybody, or I could have treated myself, that it is an affliction. Yes, there are choices in the middle of that. There's choices in everything, but it's an affliction. It's not something that can completely be controlled, so to speak, that, the state of being an addict is, or in addiction, is very, feels like you're getting tossed and turned in a washing machine. You have no idea what you're going through. And that's when they need support the most. Is that if they take a run at recovery, if they go to a detox center, to be with them, just tell them, hey, look, I'm here for you. I'm not going to fix you because I can't, but I'm here with you. I think the biggest key to addiction that I've found is a lack of connection, or feeling a lack of connection, that you don't feel anyone's in your corner. And, we all need to not feel alone. We all need to feel that we have support, that we have people around us to then support us.
Holistically, I could get into neuroscience and get into the basic psychology. But, connection, human connection is one of those very basic needs that we all need.
Yep.
And people who are suffering from addiction often don't have that. And it piles on to the amount of suffering they're already experiencing. So
I got one more
He's
thing.
got one more thing to say.
One more
you got,
thing.
Mike?
Sorry. I also want to say, one prayer can change your life. That's it.
So if you have a loved one in your life, you ever feel that being led in your heart to pray for someone, please do. And then also resources just to share with the audience. There's this perception of recovery centers are all like 10 grand a month. Nope. There's a lot of nonprofit ones, just like the type of places Mike has been working at, that make it affordable for those who need it. And those are the type of places that are really saving people's lives. Obviously, recovery is messy. It's not always going to stick, but you have to be persistent for your future self and your family and your loved ones, because it's a long, complicated process. With that being said, we got a great picture of what that looks like with Mike, and he's on the other side of winning a lot of great battles. He has a lot of battles to he's got a lot of battles that lay ahead of him, and we just want to encourage you guys to be inspired by his story. Thanks for watching Virilis. You can check out more of our podcasts on our website, which is linked in the description below. And if you found this story compelling, you want to share a story similar that you might know someone, you can contact us. Our email is on our website. Check it out. Check us out there. Have a good one. Hey everyone, thanks for watching the Virilis podcast.
Yeah, now don't forget, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more content like this flowing your way, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on our YouTube channel so you can be notified. Also, we are on Spotify and we have our own website. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating so that way we can get more people involved.
Yes, and if you want more exclusive content, go to our website in the description below. There we have our full unedited podcast devotions, and we also have blueprints. Yes. So what does that mean, Charlie?
So that means that we have blueprints where you can start a group of your own. If you feel compelled to do so, you can download the content and you can contact us with any questions that you would have about starting a group. But in the meantime, goodbye and Godspeed.